Hello, and thank you for choosing to watch this video. My name is Bill Miller, and I'm with IBM's ATS Power team. ATS is Advanced Technical Skills. And I've chosen to do a quick recording here of something called partition mobility between an HMC and an FSM. HMC being Hardware Management Console for Power Systems virtualization, the FSM being the Flex System Manager, the management appliance that is part of the PureFlex offering, which does include power nodes. The reason I decided to do this was because I know I've read and I've been told that partition mobility, the movement of a running partition from a legacy POWER6 or POWER7 system over to a flex power node works, but I felt it was important to actually see it work and to see what goes into making it work. So I'll talk very briefly about what partition mobility is, just for anybody that's not sure about it. Then we'll talk about the requirements for partition mobility, and then I'll give you a quick rundown of my demo environment, and then we will see a demo. I'll actually demo it. So conceptually, this is what you would want to do. You've got your running server, your virtual server or your LPAR running on a POWER6 or a POWER7 system. Wouldn't it be nice if you could simply pick that up and move it over to the Flex Power node? That capability is there. It's been there for a number of years between POWER6 and POWER7, POWER6 and POWER6, POWER7 and POWER7, but wouldn't we like to be able to do that as a way of moving our workloads from, say, older POWER6 systems onto our Flex nodes? And so that was the reason I thought that this was important. This is what the fundamental partition mobility architecture looks like. The components that are involved are the partition to be moved, the VIO server, the hypervisor, and a management console. Okay, those are the primary components that are involved. The partition to be moved would be getting its LUN or LUNs and its network access through the VIO server, with the hypervisor facilitating that. The management console, in addition to its normal responsibilities as the single point of management, would also be the orchestrator of the partition mobility operation. So you note that virtualized storage, virtualized network is what makes partition mobility possible. The hypervisor and the VIO server work together along with the hypervisor and the VIO server on now a target system. So the picture that you saw in the previous slide was the source system. Now we introduce the target system. This is where you're going to migrate your partition to as a means of eliminating downtime for whatever reason you want to vacate server A. In our case, in the example that I'm doing here, this would be your, say, Power 520 or your Power 510 or something like that. And this is your PureFlex node. Excuse me. So the one other thing I wanted to mention on this slide is that you see that I've got a management console and a management console, one for each one of these systems. Originally, the concept was for a management console that managed both source and target. That was the original design. That restriction, if you want to call it that, was lifted when they introduced the idea of a remote LPM, or live partition mobility. So you notice that LUNs are coming from the SAN. Actually, a LUN in this case is coming from the SAN to the VIO server and being presented off to the partition to be moved, and that same LUN would be presented to the VIO server in the target system. Also, even though showing vSCSI here for simplicity, NPIV would work as well. So let's look at requirements very briefly here. As I mentioned in the previous slides, it's a POWER6 and later capability. So, unfortunately, no Power 5. So if you're coming from Power 5 environments, you'll have to use some old tried and true methods for cutting over your migration to the PureFlex node. Power VM Enterprise Edition is required. The good news is that if you've purchased a PureFlex Standard or Enterprise, you have Power VM Enterprise. It is optional with PureFlex Express, and of course it would be something that you would have to ensure is included in a build-to-order with PureFlex involved. Operating systems, fairly full coverage as you see here. You would want to be sure that the specific TLs or TRs, right, or service packs that you want to use are truly supported, but it's very forgiving. This has been around a long time. What I did in my demo environment is I got to latest levels of AIX7, not extremely latest, but close to. I think I'm 7.1 TL1 SP3, something along those lines. So it's not absolutely current, but I wanted to be safe, and I'll show you some more details on the next slide. Source and target systems must have the same LMB size. That is critical because of the fact that the LMB size change does require a full cycle, power cycle of the managed system itself. So this is not a VIO level setting or an LPAR level setting. This is a system, a managed system level setting. So keep that in mind and know going in that you'll have to set that up. Non-prompted SSH communications between an HMC user and an FSM user will be required. You can use the make auth keys command to do that. I did it in a matter of seconds on my setup. So it's very straightforward. That's known if you just do a quick search on MKAUTH KEYS, make auth keys, you'll see plenty of guidance on that. Same network subnet available on the source and target VIO servers. In other words, since we're virtualizing the network, we need to ensure that the network characteristics of the VIO server on the target side is satisfied from the source side. The requirements are satisfied from the source side. Also, similarly, the LPAR, just a more general statement, the LPAR must be only virtualized I/O, so that would include the storage as well, and that would dovetail off of the network common network settings between the VIOs to say that you have to have the common presentation of LUNs as well, and that's root VG and data VG. Also, it seems fairly straightforward, but I figured I'd say it anyway. You must have sufficient CPU and memory resources for the partition that you're moving available on the target side. So that's fairly straightforward. And of course, the name of the partition that you're moving cannot be in use on the target system. Again, another fairly straightforward, although maybe not as straightforward as you might think, given that partition ID number can be in use on the target side. That is handled by the process, by the wizard, or the process under the covers. It just takes the next available partition ID. And then most management consoles are supported. Let's have a look at that. The reason I say most in this presentation is because there are restrictions when you're moving from rack power systems to the FSM. Okay, as you see on the screen, HMC to FSM, which is what I'm going to demonstrate, works. If you have an SDMC around still in your environment, which is certainly possible, that is supported to the FSM as well. The key note here is that mobility is not supported between the FSM and an IVM. So if you are listening and you have blades that are still managed by the IVM, and that may be the popular situation, you will not be able to use what I'm about to show you, noting that IVM is supported for partition mobility in other cases, IVM to IVM, but from an FSM or from an IVM to an FSM, that is not supported. And then the last thing I'll note here is that the POWER6 rack servers, in my case I'm talking POWER6 because that was the environment that I worked with, must be at firmware level 350 or higher. So you may have some updating to do on the source side before you can invoke this, but again, given the flexibility and the convenience of this, it may well be worth it with no downtime. So what is my environment? Well, this is what my environment looks like. As far as source system is concerned, I'm using a Power 550 model 8204 Easy 8 Able, so that's a POWER6, and my firmware level is 350.126. Either absolutely current or very, very close to it. My target system is a P260 sitting in a flex chassis. There are other components around this. I just extracted out the stuff that was important. The criticals on that, POWER7 architecture, so that's the 22X, and it is at 763.043, which again is very nearly absolute current or close to it. So you'll see that I was trying to be safe here in doing this and not taking chances on, say, running into problems with older mismatched versions. My nodes then have a VIO each, so VIO SP550 you'll see in the demo, that's the Power 550 side, and then I just had a flex system around that happened to be chassis 7, so it was VIO S7 number 1. So if I had created dual VIO, be VIO S72, 73, on and on. So my 260 actually has more than just VIO S71 on it, but for the purposes of this demo, we'll see that VIO S71 is the critical component. The LPAR to be moved is an LPAR called AIX71_P550, and again, of course, that's on the Power 550 side. The 550 actually does have 3 other partitions on it as well. In addition to the VIOS, I will just be moving 1. The other 3 were there so that I could test out multiples at the same time, which did work. My management station is in my management console is a HMC, of course, on the Power 550 side. That is at HMC level 760 SP1 with an iFix. I forget what this was for, but this again is very current, and it is a 7042 CR4. And my management station on the Flex side is, of course, an FSM named FSM 7 because of chassis 7, and it is at the December build, which I think again is the absolute most current as of right now anyway, FSM 1.2. And then finally, storage. I use I cheated here a little bit. I use the Flex V7000 that's in the chassis, the storage ITE, as my storage consolidation point. I know that you most likely will not do that. I'm at current build on that. So again, when I hit enter here, I see a shadow of my switch. I pull the switch out and see what I did here. I cheated again, right? I connected everything through the Flex SAN switch, the FC3171. So my VIO on the Power 550 and my VIO on the P260 both are connected to that SAN switch. Of course, the VIO on the 260 doesn't have much choice. Cabled in the Power 550, and then I ensured that I had LUNs from the Flex V7000 presented to the VIO on the Power 550 to create my LPAR to be moved. Again, keep in mind, this is a bit of a flattened environment here, and your situation will be different, but conceptually, we should be looking at the same concepts here. Now I pull my Ethernet switch out of the chassis, and I show you that what I've done is, again, simplified things. I've got a single VLAN, of course, not recommended for both management and this is my network for everything. Now, of course, I guess this could just be my data network, but I'm using actually no, it's not. So I'm using this for everything. So for those of you who are savvy about the Flex, you know that this is not the recommended configuration, but it's one that works, and so everybody is tapped into the same network. That follows the requirement or satisfies the requirement for single VLAN, single subnet. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move off to the demo. So stay. Okay, continuing on with the demo now. You see my demo environment is straight away presented in the screen here. So what I have is 3 windows. The upper left corner here is my HMC. Name of the managed system is Pontiles. And you note I have 1, 2, 3, 4 AIX Linux partitions and a 5th partition out there, which is my VIO server. The partition to be migrated, as I mentioned in the lecture portion of the video, is AIX 71-P550. So I'll work on that in a moment. I also have the FSM up and kind of marginalized here in the corner to show my VIOS 71 partition, which is the VIO on the target system. Now, again, I could do a lot of explaining as to how the back end is set up, the infrastructure, but in the interest of time, I'll walk you through the process and show you that it does truly work. My VIO is 2214 on the FSM, on the Flex side, on the P260, and it is 2222 on the HMC side. So I actually have a higher level VIO server on the target system than I do on the source system than I do on the target. Also notice that the name of my managed system, the P260 node, is some long, server 71 dash and then machine type model serial. So that's not really that important, but just to kind of keep things straight. So again, source is an HMC and a POWER6. The LPAR is going to be moved from there to the target, which is FSM managed, and it's a P260 node. In the lower left corner, this is my AIX 71 P550 window. And what I've got here is 3 LUNs, one of which is my root VG LUN, and the other 2 are data VG. And what I've done with data VG is I have created a file system called DataFS. And in DataFS, I have created a little utility called LPMmon. LPMmon runs something called LPM check. And what LPM check does is it perpetually loops looking for the uname -m, which is the machine that it's running on, to match the original uname -m that was there when the script started executing. And when it does not any longer match, it banners out the word moved. All right. It also throws in, just for good measure, a timestamp on every iteration of the loop. So what I will do is I will start that process so we can see what it looks like. And you see that it just continuously puts out the 8204 Easy 8 Able, machine name, partition ID 9, and then the name of the partition. Right? Now, the good news here is that I'm running this from DataFS, which is in data VG. So not only will root VG be shown to remain alive after the transition, after the migration, but also the data volumes. So, I mean, obviously simple application here, but if it was a larger application, the same would apply. Those LUNs simply are known on the target VIO and become managed through the target VIO to that migrated LPAR. So let's go right ahead into doing the migration. I choose chevron symbol. I go to operations and mobility. Now I have two options here. I can migrate or I can validate. A lot of documentation says go ahead and validate first. If you want to do that, that's a good idea. It's a good practice. In fact, in my longer presentation, I go through that process. But the bottom line here is that at the end of the validation, don't click the migrate button. Go back to here and click migrate. The reason for that is that the migrate option in the mobility menu actually gives you a more robust set of options and features that you can choose to use versus the migrate button out of the validate process. The validate process assumes some things. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on migrate. Move this over a little bit, open it up. Immediately what we see is it says I know where I am, I know who I'm trying to move, and I know that it's an active migration. Okay, and then you get two options here, two override options for the virtual I/O. And if you think about what I talked about in the presentation portion, basically since all I/O is virtualized, there may be some issues with the creation of the virtual adapter definitions on the target VIO. What if you have conflicts with adapter ID numbers, or what if those adapter ID numbers are greater than the amount of supported, of allowed, of configured virtual adapters on that VIO. So you can check these boxes, and that will allow you to not see, that will tell the wizard to not display any conflict information as far as those adapter definitions are concerned. It will simply make those adapters with the next available IDs, for example. I'm going to leave those unchecked so that we can see what might happen. Next step is destination profile. The name of the profile in the LPAR or virtual server that's created on the target side has to be something. By default, it will stay the same as the name of the currently active profile for the partition that's being moved. The good thing about that is that you get an accurate representation on the target side of that LPAR's definition as it exists on the target. The bad side to that is if you end up with some of those virtual adapter ID conflicts, let's say, those conflicts will be resolved, and the resolution values will be what are reflected in the new profile, overwriting the old definition that was in force on the source side. So in my case, I've got original profile here as my profile name for the profile that's in force for the partition to migrate. I'm going to create a new profile so that I can retain my settings as they were on the source side, and I'll have a profile that has the settings as they needed to be on the target side. Now, of course, it could be that they're exactly the same in the end if you've done your planning correctly. But in my case, I know what's coming, so to make my life a little bit easier in cleaning this up, I'm going to specify a different name. All right, as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be a remote migration, right? We don't have the ability to have the FSM managing the source Power 550, so I click remote, and then I fill in the remote HMC hostname, or in my case, I have to specify the IP address because I don't have DNS enabled, and a remote user. HSC root is the ID that I logged into the HMC with, not the best practice, but on the FSM side, we're a little bit tighter about that, and I have my own ID over there. So the ID is called Bill. Mentioned in the previous portion, the lecture portion, that I had to do a make auth keys I did it from the Power 550 HMC, targeting Bill, the user ID Bill, on the FSM. It's going to then bring up a list of all of the managed systems on that remote management console, in this case on the FSM, and I have two servers, server 71 and server 72. If you remember, server 71 was the one that I said we were going to move to. Now it performs that validation. So you get validation. So when you're not missing out on the validation, if you want, you can skip the validation portion separately and simply go with a mobility with migration and the embedded validation. So you see here that we ended up with a conflict. Yeah, I knew what was coming. Okay, and the reason for that, I won't go into the demonstration of the reason, but I'm using slot number 111 for the vSCSI adapter on my partition to move, and I mapped it to vSCSI adapter 111 on the VIOS on the source side. When the utility looked at the target VIOS, it said, I can't retain that 111 adapter ID. And the reason for that is that I capped the maximum partition or maximum slot count to 100 just so that I could demonstrate this. So if you knew going in that you were going to be doing this, you would need to ensure that you had the headroom for that specification. So you kind of want to have this planning bit thought out ahead of time in anticipation of doing LPM. You may not have had the luxury of that given you weren't anticipating doing this. So if that's the case, then you'll have to accept the fact that you're going to get a different pairing relationship between that 111 in the partition that's being moved and the ID in the VIOS. But we can accept that, just blow by it. Next up is mover service partition information. I only have two VIOs, VIOS P550 and VIOS 71. If I had more VIOs, if this was a best practice kind of dual VIO environment, then I would see all of my VIO options, and I could pick mover service partition pairings that are more in line with maybe performance characteristics. Let's say you have a VIO that's secondary for, say, for data traffic primarily. That would be a good one to give the responsibility of handling this move. Okay, or let's say you have 4 of these going on nearly simultaneously. You could spread them across different mover service partition pairs. I just have 2, so pretty straightforward. Again, one VLAN, it indicates here that it was found on the destination VIO, so no conflicts there. Similarly, it requests of me to, or requests of you to ensure that you pick all of the virtual SCSI adapters that you want migrated. So you could, I guess, leave behind some of your storage. Most likely, you'll say, I want to move all of the adapters. Now, this is one of the options that you would not get if you were using the migrate button out of the validate path. Okay, this is uniquely available in either the straight migration path out of the menu, or of course through the command line. You can migrate using MIGR LPAR. So you could sit down at the HMC, get into the CLI through SSH, and bang out a number of those. That's the way I did for simultaneous. I just backgrounded for migrate LPAR commands and let them all run at the same time, and it worked just dandy. Okay, so I know that I'm in shared pool 1 for my source. I'm going to indicate that I want it to go to shared pool 1 on the target. I'm going to wait 5 minutes. If it doesn't finish by then, it'll abort, and I get my summary. I review this. I say, yeah, that's fine, and I click finish. I'll move my status window, which is a nice little handy progress indicator. It says that the migration is starting. My status here should change fairly shortly to migrating running, which it did. Oops. And then over here it changed to relocating. So I need to open this up a little bit, and I can't get it to open. There we go. It shows migrating running. So now we want to watch down here. We want to see we're at 11% over here. And we want to watch for the partition to actually go moved. It's still 8204 easy 8 able, and notice that it's still ticking up. So 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, boom, now it's moved. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and Control C that so that we can see something there. We see that the progress is still at 97%. It does indicate that it's starting. We are migrating running, and then boom, we are gone from the source. And it's 100%, right? So I can go ahead and close that. If we look over here, we were at 17, 23, 57. And after the move, that was while we were still on 8204 easy 8 able. And now when we're on the 7895 22X, we are at 58. So we didn't lose any seconds. Now, of course, sub-second may have been a slight pause, but in the end, my target system now has my P550 partition. So let's go back to my presentation. I'll just put this up if you want to pause the presentation and take a look at those. I don't imagine those links will be hot, but you can have a look at some of the different pieces of information that I relied on in pulling all of this together. And then finally, my summary on this is that in the end, it works. Okay, there should be no concern about the possibility of pulling in your Power Systems guys and saying, "Hey, we just purchased this PureFlex chassis, these PureFlex chassis in this rack. We've got a bunch of power nodes, and we'd like you to move those resources, those LPARs, from those existing POWER6 systems. You guys know LPM. Boom, make it happen." All right, some of the takeaway points: be sure you have the latest firmware levels, make sure your VIOS is updated, make sure you think early about LMB sizes. Also, we saw the conflicts of the slot numbers. Make sure you plan and configure the networking and SAN zoning and LUN masking, all of that. All right, and a final little advertisement. If you happen to be planning on, or if you're not, I'd encourage you to plan on attending the Power Systems Technical Symposium in New Orleans, May 8 through 10, if you can make that travel. I will be redoing this, but in quite a bit more detail. I'll have an hour and 15 minutes rather than this 30 minutes or so that I've taken here. So again, I thank you for watching, and I encourage you to attend the session in New Orleans for more details. Thank you, and goodbye.